There was a time when Britain ruled the world, an empire so vast it was said the sun never set on it. Today, that same nation can barely keep the lights on. The United Kingdom, once the beating heart of global trade and finance, is now struggling through one of its worst economic slumps in modern history. Inflation, stagnant wages, rising taxes, collapsing public services, it's a mess. And the question everyone's asking is, how did one of the richest countries on earth fall this far? This is the story of how the UK's economy went from powerhouse to problem child, and why its decline isn't just bad luck. It's the result of years of political chaos, policy failure, and misplaced priorities. Let's break it down. The Brexit hangover. Let's start with the elephant in the room, Brexit. When the UK voted to leave the European Union in 2016, the promise was simple: freedom, sovereignty, and economic prosperity. But in reality, it turned into a long, painful hangover. Trade barriers went up, supply chains broke down, and the UK's access to its largest export market, the EU, became tangled in red tape and bureaucracy. British businesses that relied on easy European trade suddenly faced tariffs, customs checks, and paperwork that ate into their profits. Even small things like shipping cheese or selling online became logistical nightmares. Farmers lost markets, car manufacturers saw delays, and financial firms, London's pride, started moving operations to Paris, Dublin, and Frankfurt. The Office for Budget Responsibility estimates that Brexit has permanently reduced the UK's GDP by around 4%, and that's just the start. Meanwhile, politicians are still divided about whether to make Brexit work or quietly pretend it never happened. But either way, the damage is done. The world's once most open economy has built walls around itself, and now it's paying the price. The productivity puzzle. Even before Brexit, something strange was happening in Britain's economy. Productivity flatlined. Productivity, how much workers produce per hour, is the key to long-term growth. The more you produce, the richer the country gets. But since the 2008 financial crisis, the UK's productivity has barely grown. For nearly 15 years, output per worker has stagnated. Why? Because Britain stopped investing in the things that drive productivity, skills, innovation, and infrastructure. Instead of building new factories, improving transport, or upgrading digital networks, it relied too heavily on services and financial speculation. The result? A workforce that works hard but doesn't get richer. While people in Germany or the US saw wage growth tied to their output, British workers were stuck earning the same or less in real terms. This productivity puzzle is at the heart of the UK's economic misery. It's why living standards are falling even though unemployment remains low. You can have a job, but it doesn't mean you're better off. The cost of living crisis. Then came the cost of living crisis, the one that pushed millions of families to the brink. After the pandemic and the Ukraine war, energy prices soared. Food inflation hit double digits. Rent and mortgage costs exploded. But here's the twist. While other countries also faced inflation, the UK got hit harder. Why? Because the UK imports most of its food and fuel, and a weaker pound after Brexit made those imports more expensive. Add to that years of underinvestment in domestic energy, like the failure to build new nuclear plants or store gas, and you get the perfect storm. By 2023, real wages had fallen to levels not seen since the early 2000s. Nurses were visiting food banks. Teachers were striking. Pensioners were choosing between heating and eating. It wasn't just an economic problem anymore. It was a social one. The fifth largest economy in the world had become a place where millions lived on the edge. Broken public services. You can't talk about the UK's economy without mentioning its crumbling public services. The NHS, once a global symbol of excellence, is now overwhelmed. Waiting lists are at record highs, hospitals are understaffed, and ambulance delays have become life-threatening. Education funding has been cut, local councils are bankrupt, and public transport in many areas is collapsing. Years of austerity, spending cuts introduced after the 2008 crash, have hollowed out the state. The idea was to balance the books, but it ended up starving essential services of resources. Now Britain is paying for those decisions. Poor health means lower productivity. Failing schools mean fewer skilled workers. And broken infrastructure means slower growth. A nation that once prided itself on stability and strong institutions is now struggling to keep them functioning. Political chaos and short-term thinking. Finally, perhaps the biggest reason for the UK's economic failure: politics. Since 2016, the UK has had 5 prime ministers in 7 years. Each came with their own agenda, their own slogans, and their own economic plans. But none stayed long enough or had the courage to fix the real problems. Theresa May tried to manage Brexit but failed to unite her party. Boris Johnson promised leveling up but delivered scandal and slogans. Liz Truss tanked the markets in 49 days, and Rishi Sunak is now left firefighting inflation, debt, and public anger. Instead of long-term vision, Britain's leaders have relied on political theater. Tax cuts, U-turns, populist soundbites, anything to survive another election cycle. Meanwhile, the real issues, low investment, weak productivity, poor education, outdated infrastructure, remain untouched. The UK's problem isn't just that it's broke, it's that it's directionless. And an economy without direction can't grow, it can only drift. The Great British Housing Bubble. You can't talk about the UK's economy without talking about housing. The one thing that makes or breaks British families. For decades, owning a home was the dream. But in today's Britain, it's become the ultimate symbol of inequality. House prices have skyrocketed far beyond wages, turning property into a rich man's game. Since the 1990s, average house prices have risen more than 300%, while real wages have barely moved. The result? An entire generation, millennials and Gen Z, priced out of the market. And here's the thing, it's not because there aren't enough houses, it's because the UK's housing system has become an investment vehicle, not a social good. Wealthy landlords, foreign investors, and speculators have turned homes into financial assets rather than places to live. Government schemes like Help to Buy only poured fuel on the fire, pushing prices even higher while doing little to fix supply. Meanwhile, local councils struggle to build affordable housing because of decades of budget cuts and restrictive planning laws. The end result is generation rent, young professionals spending half their income on rent, unable to save, invest, or start families. And since rent money doesn't build wealth, it's sucking billions out of the real economy every year. In short, Britain's obsession with housing wealth made some homeowners rich, but it's making the whole nation poorer. London versus the rest. Another major problem? The UK is too dependent on London. London contributes nearly a quarter of the UK's GDP, while entire regions in the North Midlands and Wales have been left behind. For every shiny skyscraper in Canary Wharf, there's a struggling high street in Blackpool or Sunderland. This imbalance creates a two-speed economy, one thriving capital and a neglected countryside. The government promised to level up regional economies, but after years of political chaos, very little has changed. Transport links remain outdated, investment in the north is patchy, and most major decisions are still made in Westminster. Meanwhile, London continues to attract foreign money, high-paying jobs, and infrastructure spending, widening the gap even more. This isn't just unfair, it's inefficient. A strong economy needs multiple growth engines, not one overworked capital. Until Britain decentralizes and invests beyond the M25, its economy will keep limping along unevenly. Can it be fixed? So can the UK turn it around? The answer is yes, but not easily. To rebuild its economy, Britain needs courage, consistency, and long-term vision. 3 things that have been missing for years. First, it must reinvest in productivity, skills training, apprenticeships, research, and digital infrastructure. The UK needs to make things again, not just trade them. Second, it must tackle the housing crisis head-on by building more affordable homes, reforming planning laws, and taxing speculative property wealth. A stable housing market will unlock savings and reduce financial stress for millions. Third, the UK needs to decentralize power. Give cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow real control over their budgets, transport, and education. Let local economies thrive on their own terms instead of waiting for London's leftovers. And finally, Britain must rediscover its economic identity. It can't just be the finance capital of Europe anymore. It needs to invest in green tech, advanced manufacturing, biotech, and digital industries that will define the future. This won't happen overnight, but if the UK continues down its current path, political chaos, inequality, and short-term fixes, the decline will only deepen. What do you think? Can the UK's economy bounce back, or is it too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you found this breakdown eye-opening, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest global economic stories.